what we see here is the overall operational landscape. And in this webinar, we want to cover the overall infrastructure security that can span across your IT, your IoT, and your operational technology. What we're seeing here, especially with the IT security that currently majority of the companies have adopted to, is just the tip of the iceberg. There is a big depth of operational technology security out there, which is still unknown. Most of the companies still find it as a wild west because of various reasons. And it'll be an interesting way how these two merge together. And that's something that we provide to most of our customers. And glad to be part here, having this conversation with you, trying to exchange some thoughts more about the operational technology space, how the critical infrastructure, how the cyber physical systems are closely connected and getting connected with the IT environment, and what are the implications, challenges that we see, and how do we overcome that. So it's an interesting topic, and personally my favorite one. So with that, directly diving deep into what do we have. So Nist has been working extensively on building the cybersecurity framework for many years now. However, the most recent one, due to the large attacks that we have seen, especially in the United States, requires this attention that's the topic of the hour today, where the Nist cybersecurity framework globally covers five main areas, as we put it. So while there is the whole aspect of what does the confidentiality to our data look like, where is our information, what does the integrity of our data look like, and how do we maintain the availability? Personally, when we look at cyber physical systems, we see that yes, there is confidentiality to the data that is being sent out with the IP, the information that is required is important, but also most importantly, when we talk about operational technology, it's the availability that is critical to us. So when we talk about the availability, it can have direct implications towards the physical access to those systems. They are generating, or they're actually responsible for day-to-day operations, and any cyber attacks on those physical systems can negatively impact the businesses, cause downtime. Recently we had seen about a year and a half ago, Pemex, one of the largest companies working on critical infrastructure in Mexico, had about 2 weeks downtime. They had to pay almost $5 million in ransom, and they also ended up losing their productivity for over 2 weeks. And there are several instances, as that most recently I was reading today, where AWS has a major outage that's causing several Amazon and related sites and businesses to stop still for a few hours, losing millions and millions of dollars. So looking at all these things, what we see when we talk about cybersecurity framework, especially building a profile, is to have two main footprints or blueprints, where we kind of look at what does our current profile look like, and what should be our target profile that we will be building, and how do we customize that to our business. Now, there is no based on I think the experiences that the industries have today, there is no specific template that the CSF mandates or guides. It actually gives the guidelines, the best practices that can be customized to individual organizations based on how their infrastructure is laid out, based on how their network topology is, what kind of IT and OT integrations they have today. So with that, starting with the first step, it's critically important to ensure where and how do we look at what is the identification. So where and how our assets are identified. So now this is a continuous process. The first thing to know is what is out there that we know or we do not know. Maybe there is something, there are some attack surfaces that has been existent for years, and we just do not have the existing controls or do not have the existing skills within the company to actually look at specific areas, how how these assets respond to potential intrusions or potential data exfiltrations or anything that is related to a potential attack, let's say. So the most important thing that the cybersecurity framework guides is to be able to identify, conduct a risk mitigation process. So a risk assessment followed by the risk mitigation, where I'm able to identify, understand what exactly is my vulnerability, where is my attack surface today, what does basically talking about what is the risk appetite that our businesses have, and then scoring those risk appetites based on the criticality or the severity of the information that we identify. Now, this has been in existing for years or for decades in IT. But the most important thing is when I look at industrial or operational technology, there are top three things that come into picture. One is the protocols that are actually used to communicate between or communicate by these industrial purpose-built devices. They may be using legacy protocols, some of them using proprietary protocols, which are very vendor specific. Now, how do we know that some of those protocol level vulnerabilities are not exposed? Identifying what assets are in the system. So the second point is to understand how many assets are that are out there which are connected. We might have our operational technology air gap for the most part of it, but even with an air gap network, there's always internal activity, connectivity that will require an access to some of these endpoints. What do we have on the endpoint security? When we are moving into the digital transformation, how are we looking at network security assessment of these operational technology, rolling out the mitigation plan, rolling out what kind of templates we have? So those are the top two important things when we conduct the vulnerability management, when we conduct the risk mitigation process. And then we all understand that once we identify and build the specific priorities that are there, we need to have necessary protection mechanism. So this is where we bring in a specific monitoring technique. So once you identify what are the top 3 or 4 critical things that we have to identify in our operational technology network, and how many of them are interacting with my existing IT, or how many of them are still air gap. So there has to be a baseline that we will they recommend building. So once the baseline is built, the most important aspect of what Nist recommends is to isolate the part of the network that does not require, or maybe that's critical to operations. What are the different controls? We can see it later, but these are some of the things that they recommend having specific segmented networks at layer 0, layer 1, layer 2, and above until 3.5, where you have your DMZ and your IT comes into picture. But within this operational technology, creating an incident management program. So the incident management program detects whether or not we have the baselines and we're conducting regular audits. We need to have a continuous monitoring process. Do I have sufficient anomaly detection process? That is important. Is my operational technology led by threat intelligence driven, which is now driving my cybersecurity for overall my cybersecurity incident management and response program. And then most importantly, when we talk about while detecting itself, NIST also mandates that when building a profile, it's very important to map these profiles to its relevant compliance metrics. So what does my existing company compliance look like? What does my organizational risks posture look like? How do we apply the compliance and make sure that my existing incident response plans and whatever incidents that our systems are generating in our operation center, how are we mapping it with the with the policies, with the compliance metrics, and then be able to respond to any kind of breach with the playbooks that we have in place. So this is where we see when we are responding, remediating, and recovering. This is where we see quite a lot of attack remediation techniques, MITRE attack frameworks that come into play, which gives us a full kill chain of how the cyber threats start from reconnaissance all the way to your exploitation phase. How exactly are these different techniques that are focused on the adversaries? What do we need to have in place to address them? And how do we build our playbooks which are specific to our network? So this is something that in a few minutes to just cover what exactly the cybersecurity framework for manufacturing profile covers.